ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. Hanukkah is so connected to the world of Reb Nachman. The Or of Hanukkah, and Befrat now the Or of Hanukkah and Rosh Chodesh Tevis. Rosh Chodesh Tevis, which is the Chodesh of Shovavim, of the Hatovas Anerois. So everything about Hanukkah is now happening by Yeser Seis v'Yeser Ois with greater and greater power. Reb Nachman is now going to take us back to an earlier idea that we saw in the Torah, is that's when any time that a community is going through challenge, Hashem Yirachem, we run to the tzaddik. We run to the tzaddik, we run to the Rosh Yeshiva, and we say, what should we do? Of course, we're davening to Hashem the whole time, but practical. You want to ask when something is going on, what does the Rosh Yeshiva say about this? What should we do about this? You want guidance and wisdom. So too, the body of a person, the heart of the person. When the body is going through a stress, so we explain that all the blood rushes to the heart. That's why the extremities can get cold when there's a stress. And the heart starts beating faster. Because not only is the heart feeling the stress, but it now has to deal with all the blood that's rushing to it. And we explain that this is a very, very important mashal, that once the stress abates, once the challenge goes away, so the blood goes back to its normal talucha, which is the same word as halacha, and the blood returns back to normal circulation, and the heart is at rest again. So too, once through the tefillas of the tzaddik, and that stress abates, and that problem goes away, so too, all of the community returns and resumes back to healthy, normal functioning. Okay, that was a very important mashal that we explained before. We explained also that through the tzaddik davening, and through the tzaddik be machadesh Torah, halacha, be machadesh halacha, that's like a leda, that's like a birth. We said the same thing when also a person is going to give birth. We said that all the blood rushes to the womb, and the extremities become cold. Like we saw, when they wanted to know, when the servants of Paro wanted to know, how will we know when the Jewish women are going to give birth? Because the gezerah was, Hashem Yirachem, that we should throw all the babies into the Nile. So how should we know? He said when their legs become like stone, it becomes cold, meaning pshat, that the blood is rushing out, and they're becoming cold. They're leaving the extremities, and they're going to give energy to the womb that's now going to create a stress in that area in order to push the child out. So the same formula works when there's a stress in a community, Hashem Yirachem, and people run to the tzaddik, and the tzaddik that's why the heart beats faster when there's a time of stress. And then after the tzaddik davens and is machadesh halacha, so something was birthed into the world, like the womb birthing something, and at that point, just like a woman, when the birth happens, so the circulation returns to normal. Reb Nachman, that was all with regards to the heart and the womb. Reb Nachman is now going to connect another part of our body to our heart. And he's going to show you an amazing interplay between different parts of your body and how this is all what Hanukkah is about. So Yud Aleph, and we're really finishing this Torah. Tanyana Beis has been like one of my dear friends of Nachman Fried. So he always says it's hard to go to the next Torah because you're so wed to this Torah. It's like you had a chasana with Tanyana Beis, and you don't want to go to the next Torah. It's just too sweet and too beautiful. So at the same time as we're holding on to this Torah, we're going to say Hadran Alach, the Hadran Chalan, and that's coming. Ubesha shalev b'tzara, at the time that the heart is in pain. Gam hareya b'tzara, also the lungs are in pain. He's going to show us this amazing interconnectedness between our lungs and our heart. Ki hareya hi kiya maguf. The lungs keep the body going. Meaning, simply put, the heart does as well. What's the heart responsible for? The heart is responsible for bringing blood around the body. Whereas the lungs is responsible for bringing oxygen around the body. And oxygenating the blood. Ki harei mekayemes halecha levona v'mamsheches halachluchis lahaguf. So we explained last time that in the ancient system of the humors and 4 temperaments, that there's 4 essential substances in the body that need to be in proper balance. Yellow bile, black bile, blood, and phlegm. And the regulatory organ of your phlegm is your lungs. And we all know when there's phlegm issues, it's like lung stuff. Now, the way that Rav Nachman's explaining it is that the lungs are responsible essentially to cool down the body and to moisturize the body by taking the moisture that's in the air, breathing it in, and then circulating that moisture around the body, meaning to have moist, oxygenated air. So you put like a humidifier into a room, the person's having a problem breathing, it should be moist air, maybe a few essential oils in there, eucalyptus, rosemary, there's different things for different things. And through breathing in, there's a moisturizing of the body. Now, that's only if the breathing is done in a healthy way. As we're going to see now, sometimes the breathing can be in an unhealthy way, and it's going to create the reverse effect. So says Reb Nachman, he's literally taking us into our lungs and our heart right now. Ki aguf yesh lo tenuos shehei miyab shem aguf. The way that the body works is that tenuot, when you move your body, it dries out your body. You get dry, you get dehydrated. That's why after you go for a run, you need to replenish because you're dehydrated. So movement of the body is dehydrating. It dries out the body. Ki hatanuas, miyabshim, movement of the body dries out the body. Valkein, ikar akim al de'areya, shemamshechas lachluchas. And therefore, my body's moving all the time. You ever watch kids? They don't stop moving. Their bodies just move. They're not just sitting. When people get older, generally they're more stationary. Kids, though, they just move. They literally just move all the time. They're just moving. So it's important that their lungs are working properly. Of course, it's important for everybody. But their bodies are getting dried out, so to speak. So look what Rav Nachman's going to say now. Because the body's always moving and you don't want it to dry out, you need the lungs to breathe in a healthy way, to bring moisture into the body, to keep it from drying out. Now, here's when the problem happens. If my heart is in pain, so we said, if the heart is in pain, what happens? All the blood rushes to the heart, creates pressure on the heart starts beating very fast. The heart is a hot organ. Even colloquially, we talk about the heart as being, my heart is on fire. The heart is something is a place of passion and fire. So the heart is an organ that's hot. It's anyways hot. Now what happens to start beating a lot? So that's called overheating. If the heart is really beating fast, and you feel like when you're hot, your heart is beating fast. So the heart is going to beat fast when there's a stress. The problem there is that the heart starts warming up, but it can warm up too much. Good thing we have the lungs. The lungs become like these wings to cool down the heart. So healthy breathing of the lungs, that's why you see this. I remember when I was a kid, I was not exactly the calmest kid. So my mother would always just breathe. And through that, I don't know if she knew that from Rav Nachman, but she was saying it, that just breathe. You could cool down yourself. You could cool down your body. You could relax your whole self. So Rav Nachman is saying here that once the heart is going through a stress, she'az hadamim oilim v'shoitfim ala leiv, and the blood is going and it's like pounding on the heart. As alev doifik b'defikus gedolos. So the heart starts beating very, very strong. It's trying to move the blood away. The blood is pumping into the heart. Like we said, trying to get eitzah from the heart. How do we get through this stress? As I areya min hashevis neshivas gedolos. So now the lungs start breathing heavily in order to calm down the heart, which is something that we experience, that if we're going through a stressful thing, it's not just the heart is beating fast. You notice your breathing starts to go fast. Why don't you just separate the two? Okay, so what? I'm going through a stressful thing. Why is it that when the heart beats fast, then we notice the lungs start... So the reason why the lungs start going quickly is that the lungs, this is not just physiologically, we're talking about something Kabbalistic, is that the lungs are there to cool down the heart. That the heart shouldn't just get out of control and dry up the whole body. So the lungs start breathing in order to provide a coolness, lekarer the leiv. But then there's another issue. Because if the lungs are working so hard to cool down the heart, then what's going to be with the lungs? The lungs don't have something else to cool them down. You don't have a second set of lungs. Will activate new lung. You need an additional piece in the ecosystem. So if the lungs start breathing so fast and so heavily, then it becomes dangerous because the lungs were the mechanism to cool down the body. But now the lungs themselves are becoming inflamed. They're moving so fast, they're drying out themselves. And remember, we said this was Reb Nachman's illness that he was going through with his tuberculosis, this drying out of the lungs. Now it's interesting, it's a very, very trendy thing that people are into breathing nowadays. I mean, I'm happy because breathing has been around since the beginning of time. I'm happy that people are taking it seriously. But people have to realize there's not just one type of breathing. There's not just, I'm going to like a breathing group. So there's many types of breathing. There's many types of breathing, specifically related to the nose and the mouth. There's two totally different types of breathing. Even though you think it's all the same oxygen, it's totally different mechanisms and technology. That essentially, mouth breathing was something that was given to the human, the humanoid. That was the part of the human being that's like an animal, is that he was given the breath through the mouth. That's the Nefesh Bahamas. But you'll notice that when he was given the neshama, when Adam was given the soul, it says Vayipach be'apav nishmas Chaim, that breath was blown into his nose. That was not a breath of the mouth. That was a nose breath. That was breathed through his nose, through the nose of Adam. So I wanted to say, and the Svarim talk about this, that the two types of breathing, one corresponds to your higher soul consciousness, one to your lower soul consciousness. So I wanted to say that a lot of the breathing groups that are very trendy nowadays is focusing on mouth breathing. Mouth breathing. Like heliotropic breathing and like this type of, like literally hours. And people are like, they're like screaming like mamish. You ever seen some of this stuff going on? It's like, This is what's going on, just so you guys know. And it's gewaldig. It's gewaldig. But it's important to note that that type of breathing is definitely, as you see clearly, going towards the animal part of the human being. And that's why a lot of the cleansing that people feel is where their animal soul went out of whack. So they have all this like animal stuff that's like coming out, and the therapist said, just let it out. Just scream, just let it out. Whereas nose breathing, you don't usually have a person breathing through the nose and starting to come to like wild. It's much higher of Vayipa B'Av Nishmas Chaim. It's much more of just a receiving of a higher divine consciousness and less of like this animal kind of clearing stuff. So just important to note. Also important to note that if a person is doing very heavy breathing, so he's warming up the lungs, and he's at the same concern of drying out. Now, what's the tikkun of all this? If the heart is beating very fast and the heart is now drying out, Hashem Yirachem. So good thing we have the lungs to cool it down. If the lungs start, so the lungs are going to dry it also. Chas v'shalom. So what is the tikkun of this? So Nachman says the tikkun of this is it needs moisture. And this is what is called the Sheman of Hanukkah. It needs the oil. And he says, like the world says, that through oil everything becomes moisturized. The whole world knows that oil is something that gives moisture and that prevents dryness. Now, anybody who's with us in Reb Nosson, we're speaking about the Pulus Mishtanas and how all of life, we mentioned this a little bit here, is to get to the Achdus HaPoshet, to come into unity consciousness. And during the days of the week, we go through a challenge because the days of the week are all about multiplicity, what's called Pulus Mishtanas. That when Hashem made the world, He made the world in such a way where there's a lot of different stuff. It's a lot of different options. You ever been to a Walmart? Seen how many yogurt flavors there are? A lot of different options. Even though they're only owned by like one or two companies. But the world, and that has a deep meaning to it, the world itself has a lot of multiplicity. There's a lot of multiplicity in this world. And a person can get lost in the multiplicity of this world and really get back into Aristotelian trouble by looking at the world and seeing, well, this world is so filled with multiplicity, how does it originate from the one? All I see is multiplicity. So Reb Nachman says the way that you can understand that is through Shabbos. That Shabbos, everything comes back to unity. And if you understand Shabbos properly, you could take the unity of Shabbos and then push that light into the week, that you don't get lost in the Pu'ulus Mishtanas, you don't get lost in the multiplicity. And that the ultimate, like we mentioned a few days ago, that the ultimate is being able to take multiplicity and come back to unity consciousness. That's why didn't Hashem just make a world of Shabbos? He dafka made 6 days and then Shabbos. That we should be able to go through the Pu'ulus Mishtanas. We should be able to go through a world of multiplicity and be able to trace it back to the one through Shabbos Kodesh, and then push that unity into the new week and not get lost in the multiplicity of the week. And we said this is all based on the halacha that the Gemara says, Echad v'rabim halacha rabim. When you have many people that say one halacha, the same, and you have one person that has a dissenting opinion, why do we go with the many? So the simple answer is that it's a majority. There's more people saying this, we should paskin according to the many. But we explained according to Chassidus that why the Torah could have set it up any way it wants. Why did the Torah set it up that way? What's the deeper omek? Is that Hashem has great pleasure kaviyachol, when many different people could come to the same conclusion, when many different people who come from different backgrounds and different ways of seeing the world, and pulas mishtanas, and they could all come together and proclaim Hashem is one through the halacha that they're paskening, that's a much higher level of revealing unity through multiplicity than one person, even if he's smarter. And we saw this with the Tanur Shalach Noi, that the machloikis of all the Chacham against Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol, when he said that the Tanur was tahor, and they said that it's tameh, even though he was greater than them, and the halacha always followed Rabbi Eliezer. We paskin like the rabbim, and even though he was bringing bas coals and he was bringing carob trees, and walking around, and he was changing the rivers, and he's caving in walls and all sorts of, and the Chaim are like, Echad v'ram halakha rab. We're not impressed by that. It's more impressive to get all of these rabbis who have such different ways of seeing the world to agree on a halacha. That's much more impressive because that's going into the multiplicity and finding the unity from the multiplicity. So now back to us. What is a unique thing? When something dries out, there's a quality that happens to it, and that is, are things unified when they're dry, or are they pixelated and broken up? When something dries out, you see it starts crumbling. Like dry bread, it starts crumbling. You have a bunch of earth. When the earth is dry, you touch it and the whole thing. What unifies something? Oil. When you add oil, it kind of makes it like a gush. It kind of shtups the whole thing together. It unifies things. So deeper, Reb Nachman's saying that when the heart is drying out and the lungs are drying out, it means a person is getting lost in the pa'ulus mishtanas. He's getting lost in the multiplicity. Yeah, Eli?
But oil, how does it bring together things if it's like a solid? And if you try to pour water into oil or any other liquid, it doesn't mix. It's a solid. It won't mix anything else.
The oil will unify solid pieces. It will make things into like a gush. Like you pour oil on some, let's say you have all this dried up stuff, and you pour some oil, it starts to bring these pieces together, this particulate matter together. If I had all this dust and you add some oil to it,
Some on my hands.
You want some on your hands?
Yeah, I need some on my hands.
Yeah, when your hands are dry, things are flaking off. You put some oil on there, it's like, oh, I'm one again. I'm not like, shedding. You know what I'm saying? You don't want that. You don't want to be just particulating, like just pixelating. You want to be one. You put oil on, you're like, I have a hand back. You know what I'm saying? This time of year, so the oil is something which, when you add it to the dryness, it starts unifying things again. So the tikkun of the heart overheating, because it's going through that stress, and then the lungs doing their job, attempting to cool things down, but then being overworked, is that you need the Sheman. You need the Sheman. And that's the Sheman of Hanukkah. The Sheman of Hanukkah we're going to see is really everything we talked about earlier in the Torah, for those who have been with us, that the entire process of the Sheman, which we explained, was going through the three names of Emes, of Kel, Elokim, and Yud Kei Vav Kei, and those shining in to the four parts of Dibur, the Dibur of Tzedakah, the Dibur of Ashiris, the Dibur of Tshuva, the Dibur of Ashiris, the Dibur of Malchus, that Emes, that's the Emes of Hanukkah, that's the L'mala min HaTeva, that's the Shemen that's now nourishing my soul, my body. And that's what Reb Nachman's now talking about, where he says that the only way that I could fight this, the Shemen hu refuah lehareya. When I bring Shemen, I start healing my lungs. Shemen's a very good thing to have in the diet. There's many tzaddikim, you see, they have Shemen like all the time. Shemen zayis. And he says, like Rav Nachman says, like everybody says, the oilam. Ki Hashem melach leach, Sheman moisturizes you. Hainu bechinas Hashemen anir la'el, the Sheman of Hanukkah. Shu bechinas tikunat tzara. Oh, because remember, what did we say was the tikkun of the tzara? The tikkun of the tzara is when everyone was running to the tzaddik, right? So the heart is beating fast. But then what's happening through that? The tzaddik is being mechadesh, he's davening. He's being mechadesh halacha. How is he being mechadesh the halacha? Through the emes. Through the emes of kel, elokim, yudke, vavke. Through those three shemas, he's being mechadesh the halacha. And those three shemas coming into the four parts of his dibur. And once he does that, the halacha is birthed. And now the blood could go back to normal circulation and everything calms down. So this is the shemen that we're talking about, is bringing down this very, very high experience. And it's fascinating that one of the shemes that you think about when you light Hanukkah candles, when you say lahadlik ner Hanukkah, I know it's a big discussion, do you say shell, not shell? The Chassidim and the Mekubalim and the Sfardim don't say shell, Ashkenazim generally do. In some Siddurim you'll see shell is in parentheses. Usually, in the Gemara they say you don't read the parentheses. So, but without getting, political here, you could say shell if you want, and Hashem loves you. But in the Ariya Kodesh, shell is it's for Shabbos, and lahadlik ner Chanukah, those Rosh Tevis, those three letters of lahadlik, lamed, ner, nun, Chanukah, ches, those three letters spell the word nachal. Nachal is a river. Nachal is a river. Nachal Noveh Mekor Chochma is a river flowing down. And you're having in mind that you're bringing this river of emes, this unbelievable river, a flow of shefa, of shemen, like coming down like a waterfall of shemen, you know what I'm saying? Mamish, a waterfall of shemen coming down from Shemayim. And you're bringing this, and this lahadlik ner Chanukah, this is nafshenu chiksa Hashem, that my soul is yearning for you, Hashem, which is also the Rosh Tevis. Nafshenu, nun, chiksa, yearns, ches, Lashem, lamed, is also the nachal. This is this flow, this river that you're thinking about when you're lighting the Hanukkah candles. This is this flow that's coming down from kel, elokim, yudke, vavke, that you're pulling down, the emes, the shemen, and that's going to birth halacha and halicha, and that's the shashua olam haba, that you're going to be moided to Hashem of just all the goodness that He's giving, and that's really what we're getting ready for in the world to come. Yeah, Yankov?
So, when you said that tzaddik is like the heart of the community, and the heart starts beating fast when there's an issue going on, everyone's running to the tzaddik. When the tzaddik is davening, is that like the breathing that cools down the heart? What would be the breathing in this, for the lungs?
I think the breathing is davening. I think it's also some of the meditations and the yichudim. A lot of yichudim means you're connecting things. You're connecting things. As opposed to, it says the Rishonim are always trying to make things separate. They're trying to break things up. They always want to make split and division. And, I daven in the other shul. What do you daven? The other shul. Come on, we couldn't keep this together. It's all about making division. That's the Rishayim. And the tzaddikim are always trying to make things one. They're trying to unify people. They're not focusing on what we have separate. They focus on what we have in common. That's called a yichud. A yichud is unifying ideas, unifying things. It's a very nice thing when you go on a date with someone and you could, and the conversation is, I also share that. Or something that you say, she shares that idea with you. Or, you mentioned this thing, and me too. That's a yichud. as opposed to, oh, I don't do that, or that's not me, or that. Okay, now, there's certain times that there has to be distinctions, but yichudim is we're making things come together that are opposite. That's a yichud. So yichudim are done a lot of times with breathing, is that you're breathing in and you're going and you're connecting ideas. Breathing is a very unifying thing. Even the tzaddikim talk about breathing, that we have parts of our nervous system that are voluntary, right? That you can totally control. You can control the movement of your hand. But then you have parts of your nervous system that you don't control at all, like your heart. You don't decide to make it beat. Okay, wait a second. We're going to slow it. Wait a second. Okay, beat. No, don't beat yet. Now, beat. It beats. Digestion. It's like, let me just not digest for a little bit, and I'll turn it back on, I'll turn it off. It's happening involuntarily. But then there's a part of your body which both works voluntarily and involuntarily. That's called your breathing. You could literally stop it and hold your breath, or it happens without you realizing it. It's the bridge between your conscious part of your neurological system and your subconscious. It's happening on its own, which is a very interesting thing. That's why breathing is that thing which is always in every meditative practice. It bridges the conscious and the subconscious. Because when you're going through a meditative experience, you're trying to bridge that gap into your subconscious world. And that's why real big people could, like big tzaddikim, they can, even their subconscious, they could slow their heartbeat down. I don't mean, but they have total control of everything. So breathing is that bridge that bridges the gap. So I think that the tzaddik's breathing is a big part of that, and the yichudim that he does through the breathing. But now we're saying that there's another level that the tzaddik has to draw from the sheman. That even if his breathing gets out of control, he needs to be able to draw from the sheman. The sheman is what we're talking about, is this world of emes, of bringing down emes from the three shemas of Hashem, things that we mentioned earlier in the Torah. And then the Rebbe says this. In the beginning, when the tzaddik is going through this tsar, kama v'kama neshama sheba oilam hazeh v'oilam haba mekoinim mis'ablam al tsaroi v'gam hashchina mekoinenes. You know, tzaddikim are not just connected to things, and all of us, because am kulam tzaddikim, they're not just connected to things of this world. Like Rav Kook says that death is just called hisgabrus Chaim. Death is just a strengthening of life. It's just life in a different form. So, and the Gemara is replete with discussion about the Mason knowing what's going on, communicating. Rabbi used to come back and make kiddush for his family after he passed away on Friday nights. What do we do by Tchias HaMesim? As a husband and wife have to get remarried, they need a get. When the Gemara says in Megillah that Rabbi shechted Abzeira and then he brought him back to life, so did he need to re-mekadesh his wife after that? Because in Isha's koines hatzma b'shtei drachim beget with Misa Sabal. So he was gegangen. So when Abzeira came back, she was koines hatzma. They had to re-mekadesh her.
What if she married someone else?
Exactly. These are all shilas. But what you see is that the distinction between life and death in the Torah, there's a distinction, but we start to see that it's not as big as we think it is. We tuck in your tzitzis when we go into the Beis HaChaim. We even call it a Beis HaChaim. So you have to know that this is just one realm of reality, being in Olam Hazeh. in this world of Olam Hazeh, the Asiya, physical life in this world. But the soul goes on forever. And what goes on from the soul is the consciousness that it was able to acquire through free will in this world. And the deeper consciousness it's able to receive, that's why it's such a big thing to learn Kabbalah and Chassidus, is that it's just going deeper and deeper and deeper into your soul and into consciousness itself. That's going to be what you'll have forever. So here it's describing, first simple level, when the tzaddik is going through a pain and everyone's davening that the tzaddik should be well, and then the tzaddik heals, so everyone feels good. But it says that not only down here, but in Shemayim also, they're davening. In Shemayim, they're connected. And the Shekhinah herself, so to speak. The Shekhinah means the Or of Hashem in this world. The Shekhinah herself is, so to speak, yearning for the healing. And what happens? When that happens, everything becomes positive again. After the tsar, because through the tsar, like we said, that's bringing a leida into the world, that's a birth. A tsar means there's going to be a birth. Something is going to be birthed. That's like we said, there's a big tsar before a birth. When a person is going through a tsar, which means a pain, it means it's getting ready to birth something, if he lets it. So a person has to know when he's going through a tough time, that's usually a sign that you're about to birth a new level of consciousness into the world. And Hashem knows what he's doing. He'll set up a situation because let's say a person wasn't getting the message. They're in some job or some dead-end thing, or they think they're in a good job, and really their job is taking them in a dead-end way, and then all of a sudden things start happening in their life. And they start getting different challenges start coming up that they wouldn't have expected. And those challenges start putting pressure. And you think, why am I going through this? Everything's fine, like I got this great 6-figure job, and I don't know, I thought it was all going to work out. And then all these challenges start happening. Because the answer is that if he lets it, he's about to birth something new into the world. A new version of himself. He's about to shed something, which we talk about in Hoshana Rabbah, like snakeskin. He's about to shed this old person and birth something new. Now Reb Nachman says something interesting. He says, if the Shekhinah is in pain, he's going to bring an amazing thing for not such righteous people. And an example is brought from when Beis Din has to take someone's life. And a Beis Din who took a life once in 70 years was considered a bloodthirsty Beis Din, once in 70 years. So as far as capital punishment, practically, it basically never happens, practically. Because the reason why we don't want people to commit crimes that would have capital punishment is not because they're going to get killed. That doesn't engender healthy human beings. We want to do it because it's wrong to kill. It's wrong to... That's... You know what the punishment for stealing is in the Torah? You'll never guess. It's so severe. Give it back. That's it? What about some $50,000 fine, 15 years in jail, chop off his hand? The guy robs a bank. Give it back. What do you mean? Chop off his hand. Now, Beis Din will have ways of speaking to this guy and give him some good therapy. But you know why we don't want to have punishments except for give it back? Oh, and by the way, if you decided that you were hiding from the fact that you wanted to give it back, pay double. Which is not so crazy. Is because the reason why a Jew shouldn't steal, and anybody in humanity, is because stealing is wrong. It's not because there's going to be some wild punishment. It's that we're engendering and creating human beings that don't steal because they understand that other people's property is sacred and that stealing is wrong. Yeah.
Next thing you know, they're going to start, the base in going to start giving incentives.
What incentives to
Not steal. No.
People have to realize that we're trying to engender human beings that are developing their character, that are going to go beyond this world with awareness. Not stealing is one of the Targum mitzvahs, which means this is part of your soul that needs to be developed. Every one of the Targum mitzvahs is a part of your neshama that you have to perfect. And we can come back in different gilgulim in order to perfect different parts of our neshama, which means there's some part of my neshama called don't steal. That I'm going to have this part of my neshama for eternity. And I want to make sure that I've perfected this part of me for eternity. Not only because it's wrong, but that's part of it, and I don't want to take from Yenim, because it's his, and I respect his things, but I want to engender in me that feeling, because this is part of me for eternity. So, when Beis Din had to take a Rasha, so it says about him that Ki afilu al dam shel rishayim, the Shechina is mekaynenis. The Shechina says someone had to be taken. So kal v'chomer, which you see, kal v'chomer al dam shel tzaddikim, k'may she'am Rabbi Sein zechoin levracham, aval k'shezoich l'refuah. But when the tzaddik receives that refuah, and that leida, and that halacha, as a misnachem in kulam, all the neshamas in this world, all the neshamas above, in the olam neshamas, there's like a nechama. They're at rest and at peace. The nimsha simcha la'olam, and simcha comes to the world. The bechinas ve'erapeyu ve'ashalim nichumim loy ve'lavelov. This is like noyach, like we explained. She'al de refuasei nimshach nechama l'kol ha'avelim. Hainu simcha. So what do we see so far today? Tomorrow is going to be our last day on this Torah. And Reb Nachman then just brings us into, see, it's like a world of Kabbalah for like a day. Reb Nachman, he brought us to a world of understanding our body, understanding our heart, that when the heart goes through a stress, it starts beating fast. And the heart is the place inside of us that feels, the heart is like the tzaddik that feels everything that the nation's going through. And Baruch Hashem, we have lungs, and the lungs cool down. But if the lungs become too overworked, then the lungs themselves dry out. And that's like getting lost in the Pu'ulas Mishtanas, getting lost in this world. And we need the Sheman. We need that ore of emes, the Sheman of Hanukkah, which is the ore of the Shemus Kel Elokim Havaya, to come and to illuminate the four parts of our dibur, that we're speaking words of truth, that we're real people of truth. And this will then create healing to the lungs, and that oil will come and moisturize and bring us back to the ore of Shabbos Kodesh. Just like Hanukkah Shabbos are times of ore and candles, a rogel be'or, rogel b'ner, somebody who's accustomed and he's careful about lighting his ore, lighting his candles. It says, Havyale bonim tamidei chachamim, will have children that are tamidei chachamim. He's birthing more halacha into the world. And when the tzaddik is going through that tsar, and he gets out of that tsar, so then all the neshamas in this world, in the olam of neshamas, they all have this great simcha, that more halacha was birthed into the world, that more blessing came into the world. And for you and I to feel this, for you and I to feel that in my own heart, there are things that I feel, there's a universe that I feel in my heart that I'm going through. And I want to focus my breathing to be able to cool down, to keep my heart in the right balance. But I know that sometimes my heart becomes engulfed with passion for good things, and my breathing becomes also overworked. And therefore I always have to keep the shemen, I always have to keep the ore of Hanukkah that's going to moisturize and cool down my body. And therefore, like Hanukkah, we know that you don't make Havdalah. Hanukkah, the or continues the whole year of Hanukkah. And Hanukkah, anybody who tries to clean out their cups, they never quite clean out. The Sheman is always there. There's always a residue of the Sheman. And that's what it says about the tzaddikim, that the tzaddikim are living in a world of Sheman. And that's why it says that they're neshama. The neshama is compared to Sheman. The neshama is the neshima. It came through the breath, through the nose. The neshama, called neshama, called neshima, the neshima. The neshama is the letters shmoine, which is the Sheman of Hanukkah, just like Ali said, the Sheman always goes up. It's always above. The neshama is always above. But the Yidden that put the neshama into the goof, that they infused even their body with the Sheman of Hanukkah, that their bodies have like a residue of that Sheman, so even their bodies won't rot after 120 years, because the Sheman, the neshama, there's a residue of my soul still in my body. It's like the Vilna Gaon, the Rebbe Melech, when they dug up the bodies, they saw that they were intact, and many stories like this. We should be zoicha mamish to the Sheman of Hanukkah, the or of Hanukkah, Befrat, Rosh Chodesh, the gewaldige Lamed Vav Neros, the Lamed Vav Tzaddikim, the Lamed Vav Shois of the Or Agonos, shining now, B'Yeser Seis V'Yeser Ois, now in Rosh Chodesh, the Chiddush of Tevis, the Atovas Aneros, should be zoicha mamish to all the Or of Hanukkah, to Lamalim and Ateva, the Umi Noisar Kan Kanim, Lasois Neis, La Shoishanim, that Hashem who did a gewaldige neis to the Shoishanim, to the roses, Kish Shoishana ben Achoichim, that Klal Yisrael is like a rose amongst the thorns, to be Zoicha Mamish, to all the bracha, to the Shira Shirim, Yishakenim and Shikas Piyu, Ki Toiv Doidecha Miyayin, who's going to be finishing this Torah, B'Siyat D'Shmai tomorrow. We should be Zoicha Zayin, to all the brachas of Shabbos, to all the brachas of Chanukah, the brachas of Rosh Chodesh, to light the Or, Ner mitzvah v'Torah or Ner Hashem nishmas adam, that our own neshama becomes inflamed with the or of Hanukkah, and we should be zoicha zayin to build the binyan beis hamikdash, to see once again the menorah b'chatzros kodshecha, with Mashiach tzidkein b'mher of Yamina. Amen. Oy awashreinu matogenu manayim Leinu ba la 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 ya washeinu matagay umarayim galeinu ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ba la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 di 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 la 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 Hasheinu matavakei umanayim gavaleinu oh ya Hasheinu matavakei oh umanayim gavaleinu ya la 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 ni 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 la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 Shachris.